Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to the USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us in class today, and we're broadcasting end to end via solar. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Rich Scheben is with us. He's off grid. I'm off grid in the studio. Welcome, Rich Shealy.
Thank you, Vincent Finelli. How are you this morning?
Really well. I wanted to share with you something that we have not discussed, and it made the news. So on Sunday night, we heard this. It sounded like a banging, a hammering. Actually, I thought it was one of our cats climbing across the beams in the house and then jumping from beam to beam. But it actually sounded like the cat was jumping from one beam to another and missed and fell. It was like a dead cat bounce, that kind of a sound, like thud, thud. But it was a little louder than that. And I thought, wow, it's every few seconds. And I was thinking, we don't have that many cats. And it didn't sound like it was a survivable thump, bang. So I checked the house out, and we had an ice storm here. I mean, it was a massive, massive ice storm, probably half an inch of ice in some places. We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't even go out the door. All we could do is, just slide over to the tractor, get in the tractor, slide while we're driving the tractor and feed the cows. They were sliding. The dogs were sliding. Everybody was sliding. Even the chickens were sliding. And what we found out was, so I said to one of our friends, did you have that banging sound like on the roof? Yeah. And that was about 10 miles away. And then we looked in the newspaper online, and what it was the ice was refreezing on the roofs of houses. The temperature had a quick drop, and it was bang, bang. And I thought, man, oh man, if this is settling, we're going to have no house by tomorrow morning. Maybe it's an earthquake, but boy, it's lasting a really long time, 3 hours. So what it was the ice freezing and melting, and slightly melting, not really much, because the temperature stayed way below freezing. So that was the first time we've ever experienced that kind of a sound. Have you ever heard that on your roof, Rich Scheben?
Oh, absolutely. And here I am when I thought you said dead cat bounce. I thought that we were heading towards metaphors to talk about the economy. So, well,
we are, we are. But I wanted to.
But yes. Pardon my digression here, but yes, we hear that all the time in Montana because obviously we have very cold temperatures in the summer. Mm-hmm. We have very hot temperatures. I mean, we're in the hundreds often in the summer, mm-hmm. and in the winter. I'll just give you the last 2 days' temperatures lows. Today's low is 2. Yesterday's mm-hmm. low is -5. Now, mm-hmm. granted, we had one of the most mild Januaries I've ever seen in my life as far as temperature goes in my 31 years in Montana. But we had so many temp thaws, and we had 49, 50 degrees, 47 degrees. Often in January. It was crazy, and sounds like February has given us our last dose of winter. So we hear the expansion and contraction often because I have a metal roof. Mm-hmm. I have a log cabin, and logs also settle, despite the fact that this cabin has been around for a little while. But, we're just used to those type of moans and groans and, dovetails with bear roars and elk bugling and mm-hmm. and turkey gobbling and all the sounds of wildlife. And, it's all part of it.
Now, just to continue, just for a little bit more, when you hear these sounds of expansion and contraction, does it loosen your roof to the point where someone's got to get up there? Do you have screws that hold with neoprene washers that hold your roof down, or do you have a seamless type of roof, or what kind of roof do you have?
The seamless and screwless roof didn't really come, even if it was out there, I didn't hear about it when I built this cabin, 12 years ago, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And I keep an eye on things, make sure that, the screws are on there, and if I have to go or hire somebody, the days of me being on a roof is gone. I mean, if I fall with my spine at my age, I'll be lucky if I'll be getting coloring books for Christmas for the rest of my life, if you know what I mean. So
sure.
I hire young people to check stuff like that. And, I keep an eye on stuff. I stain my cabin every 4 or 5 years. I do the maintenance that's necessary to keep things up. And, it's actually fun. It's fun having winter. It's fun having the 4 seasons and preparing for winter. It's fun to have chores and things that are part of the lifestyle, because when you have a winter, you have the ability the necessity to think with foresight. You got to have your vegetables in. You got to preserve them. You got to go hunting and have your meat in. You got to have your firewood up. I mean, it really is a process of preparation and keeps your mind sharp for foresight thinking. And I think it's a blessing to have all this.
Well, I agree with you, and we do the same thing. As the seasons change, we prepare. We look at what we think is going to happen. And, we bought some, we raised some hay, and we rolled about 350,000 pounds of hay, and that wasn't, based on the weather change, that wasn't going to be enough. So we had to buy, over 120,000 pounds more of hay locally. So that's the kind of thing that the winter's been really rough here, really, really rough. Up until yesterday, we had 2 calves in the garage. They were born, and we put some hay in the garage, and we built a little pen for them. And so they're under a truck that's being worked on the lift. And so we're kind of, our garage is full right now, but one of those cows we turned back out to his mama because the temperature warmed up. But it was just born, and the temperatures were like 9 degrees. A cow came out soaking wet, and we dried him off, kept him in the garage, made sure he was fed, and out in the front yard he is with his mama right now. So that worked out. But we've experienced a tremendously rough winter, just like the Farmer's Almanac said we were going to get violent temperature swings. But you want to talk about the economy? I'm posting right now as we talk about it, a link to you and me last Tuesday. It's titled "We Discussed the Economy Changes," and there's an audio link. So for those of you who want to hear what we had to say last week about the economy, you'll be able to go to that link in just a couple minutes, and that's at usapreparedness.com, page number 1. Rich, what are your thoughts about the dead cat bounce, the economy, and some of the things that you feel are happening?
Well, in addition to what I've been saying over the past few months and Tuesday, I have to look at math, okay? Because half of what you read is a psyop out there, folks. It's people trying to sell you something, whether it be a philosophy, an ideology, some type of investment portfolio. Somebody's trying to sell you something, and the powers that be are paying for a lot of this. So 85% of the people buy high and sell low. And I'm not trying to tell anybody specifically what to do. I'm just trying to give you facts to try to give the little guy a shot, because the little guy has no representation, has no protection under the law, has no chance for restitution, unless you're part of a certain group, and then you can sue each other on the bottom 93% and get a few pennies to keep the masses in line. But when you look at certain facts, okay, and I'm just going to rattle a few off. Interbank lending. just the past few months has almost come to a standstill. Recently, $12 trillion purchases by central banks, global interest rates at the lowest levels in over 5,000 years, combining words in almost every sentence like artificial, inflated assets, bubbles, corruption. You look at our deficits, trade deficit and budget deficit. I believe our trade deficit, last time I checked, has been not in our favor since 1973, and it's still going to the moon. 3%. I cannot tell you how many times I've read when the 10-year bond reaches 3%, it's basically an off-the-cliff moment, credit crashing. While last I checked, at least yesterday, was 2.85%. So we're only 15 basis points from 3%. Debt, household, corporate, government, off the charts, like records off the charts. Leverage and margins, off the charts, going to extreme levels. Lowest savings rate in over 10 years. Record high consumer confidence, and that's starting to come down a little bit. Disposable personal income barely up. It's the only reason it's up a little bit is because of the wealthy, with things like stock buybacks and borrowing money at zero interest rate and feathering their own nest with stock options, etc. Velocity of growth down. Velocity of money changing down. They're talking about QT, quantitative tightening. In other words, taking money out of the system. And then the demographic issue, of course. For us to have economic growth, to get out of this with a soft landing, everything that I'm reading about, we need rapid growth. Rapid. We're not going to get it. And economic growth needs savings, not money printing. And less debt for any prosperity for the bottom 93% of the little guy. And if you've heard me over the years, you know I try and stick up for the little guy. And too many of us are stabbing each other in the back as well, with group identity politics and all this political correctness. And if you give your word in business and commerce and you give a handshake, you have to honor it. If your word of honor in commerce, I'm not going to judge anybody in their personal life because you got to go behind closed doors and see what happened to them, why they're doing certain things. But in commerce, we have to stick up for each other. Vince?
Hold that thought. We're going to break. Rich Evans with us, offgridmontana.com. You know, Rich, I like artwork. I can appreciate really great art. And I was... this is hard to describe. But, Barry Soetoro and his roommate, who trades by the name of Michelle, there was an art unveiling, her official portrait, and it made the news. I'm looking at Daily Caller. It is the most unflattering, hard to look at, disgrace. It's a disgrace of what happened with paint and canvas. It's just beyond belief. It looks like Michelle, I'm talking about Michelle Obama, there was an unveiling of her portrait at Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery in Washington, February 12th. And this life-size application of paint on canvas. I can't even call it art. This application of paint on canvas was unveiled. The gal who painted it was black. So it wasn't like it's a racist thing where someone of a different race was trying to make Michelle look horrible. But that's the effect. It is the worst attempt at art I have ever seen in my life. I don't know how to even describe this. It looks like Michelle is sitting down with this flowing tent. She's sitting on top of a tent. But the tent happens to be a dress. She's got her, like those high school photographs where the person is holding up his chin or her chin. You see that maybe in the 70s. Like, why would anybody do that? Well, that's it. That's what it looks like. Her hair looks strange. They didn't have enough black to apply to her skin, so she's lighter in this application of paint on canvas than she really is. It's beyond horrible. And I was reading some of the comments, and they're absolutely hysterical. I'm trying to get to them at this point. I'm unable to get to them, but okay. So here's a comment. It does not even look remotely like her. Okay. Another one, making her look more white would be a gotcha to the lady who made her a name for herself black in her Chicago days, when she referred to the local city officials on WGN News as those nasty white people. I'm not trying to be divisive here, but I'm just reading some of these comments. Nice. Also, the tent used to hide her rear end is 3 to 4 sizes too small. Now that this tent is huge. Another one says that thing has its own zip code. That means how large this is, I assume. Another one says you get what you don't have to pay for. This is absolutely horrible. Rich Shealy, did you see this application of paint on canvas?
Oh yeah, it hit quite a few news sites, and Barack Obama's painting is not bad, despite I don't know if that's poison ivy in the background he's sitting in the foreground with. I don't know, but his painting regarding his look, his color, his everything is not bad. But Michelle Obama, if I saw her painting or this painting anywhere, museum, hallway, bus stop, subway, I definitely wouldn't. I wouldn't even put people in the top 10. So I always talk about hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications, and obviously that didn't work out for her. But there's one, I read a lot of the comments, but there's one comment that really popped out at me, and looks like I'll be saying it after the break, but it's more of a message about what's been going on with the American people and wiretapping. And I'll read that after the break if that's okay then.
Yeah, sure. We'll be back. Rich Sheaben's with us. OffGridMontana.com. You know, I enjoy reading some of the comments on some of these articles. And the comments are absolutely hysterical about this application of paint on canvas with respect to Michelle Obama. And one guy's comment said, I didn't think it was possible, but her portrait is even uglier than real life. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine having someone paint your portrait and then reading these comments? And then it goes on into, let's see, there's some really good ones a little lower. Oh, and it looks like they've disappeared. But it talks about, the corruption in government and lawyers and, okay, let's see. Here's one that says, well, they'll wish they were on a one-way trip to Mars. This is in reference to giving them a ride, the Obamas a ride on the Tesla Roadster on top of the rocket, give them a trip to Mars. I mean, this is about the ugliest painting I've ever seen. Rich, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'm going to make a comment, pardon me, after I read this one comment that I was about to read before the break. It says, some things seem off about Obama and Michelle's official portraits. After some deep thinking, I think it's missing the wiretap earpiece for Obama's ear and just needed to be scaled to size so it can fit inside Gitmo's walls. Now, I want to comment on that. Folks, there's a reason why I dovetail financial, economic, social, and political rationale together, because we are hanging on a thread. we're dangling off of a cliff, especially for the little guy, the bottom 93%. Our economy hit peak growth, especially with demographics, around 2000. So going long right now in the stock market with all of the red flags out there, you got to really think about this. Growth minus the deficit equals no growth. Everybody says, well, there's cycles. I hear this from the layperson all the time. Oh, well, there's cycles, the crash, correction, cycle. Well, the cycle happens about every 6 years. Okay, now we've gone almost 10. Lipper Analytics, basically, U.S. fund investors took $24 billion out of the stock market week ending February 7th. And we have 4 times greater leverage than we had in 2008. The withdrawals from U.S.-based equity and mutual funds and ETFs was the largest withdrawal on record ever. And records date back to 1992. So they use terms like overbought, overbullish, overvalued. And then you got to look at what's happening with our budget. I mean, I think Trump's doing some good things. I think he's doing some things that are very questionable. Budget examples, $700,000 to interpret what Neil Armstrong said on the moon as a grant. I mean, I'd rather spend the money and ask Ralph Cramden. It'd be cheaper. Remember Jackie Gleason from The Honeymooners? Well, a little tongue-in-cheek there, but this is how pathetic it's going. I mean, subsidizing live theater for Schumer, especially in his New York district. I mean, people. 78% of people live paycheck to paycheck. And this is why the elite are doing these things, is to distract them down and divide us by groups. Do you know the U.S. reserve currency, as far as its potency, is down 60%? Again, all I do is read every day words like artificial, bubble, corruption, manipulation. The average PE ratio is about 32. There's stocks out there that's 50 plus, 100 plus. The buy for a stock is supposed to be 12. So that means you're willing to wait 32 years for that company to earn their dollar back. Even Munchin said, and I think he misspoke because he didn't want to let it out, the U.S. wants a weak dollar. Well, who wants to buy a treasury bond when you're admitting the value is going to go down? So when no one buys your bonds, your debt, interest rates have to go higher. And the results are higher deficits, and imports cost more dollars. Now, if interest rates go up, like I talked about the 10-year, which everybody keeps talking about, that particular threshold, if you will, if they crash the bond market because they raise interest rates too much, everything collapses. Stocks, bonds, housing, real estate, commercial and retail, toast. Emerging markets, because it's mostly in U.S. dollars, toast. Interest in our debt, forget about it. You know, we have depending on what you read, 2 to 3 times the amount of U.S. dollars abroad than we have here. So if there's a perception that we're going to formally lose the world reserve currency, there's no confidence in fiat dollars, and interest rates go up, we could go from a deflationary, stagflationary consequence to major inflation. Now, if that happened, because wages are only going up for the elite few. Economic growth is not there, and inflation is not there, even though they're trying really hard. So with the lower velocity of dollar growth and QT coming on board, all-time debt high, credit collapsing like the yield curve, less people are going to borrow. We're being distracted, dumbed down, and divided by groups, okay? We're allowing the mainstream media to sway public opinion. And I say this all the time, Trump inherited sabotage and demolition. But can he change the cycle with what was given to him? I've read articles during the late term of Obama era where the deficit was going to soar after what policies they had done. Now, Trump is doing some great things. He's basically decreased minority unemployment, where Obama doubled it. But the economic headwinds with demographics and debt credit, pensions, valuation, future rates of growth, government promises, corporate household global debt, we need to really keep our eye on the ball. because everything is speculation and hedging. Remember, 85% of people buy high and sell low. We got to do stuff that's going to keep us. I mean, we're talking about survival here. The only things that are really doing well are things that are being backed up by the elites for the elites. Subsidies, money printing, special interests, lobbying, PACs, and all the books are cooked. So with the new industry coming, with robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, and the technocracy, I'm reading articles where the artificial intelligence is going to tell you if you're suitable to have a procedure or an operation. How do you think that is going to be programmed by the elites? All AI has to be programmed. People, we're really keeping our eye off the ball for the little guy. There's nobody there representing the little guy. When I say the little guy, I mean the bottom 93%. The game is 100% rigged, and they're even admitting it. Even Kramer admitted it on TV, how everything is rigged and illegal. So, this is one of the reasons I do this show, and we talk about these things, is because America needs heroes right now. I'm not saying that I am one, because I call myself an average Joe, non-hyphenated American all the time. What we need is whistleblowers. What we need is people to come on board publicly and give ideas and solutions to help out the little guys. We need people who work in the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and all intelligence agencies to come out with the corruption against the people. We need people who work inside big pharma, especially the vaccines and all the synthetic drugs that they're pushing, to come out and say, hey, the people need to know this. We need people in the central banks, the big banks, and the UN to come out. We don't need all this social disorder. It's all created to create chaos and infighting. I mean, AI companies who practice surveillance and censorship for the little people, these people who are doing this should be arrested. The mainstream media, the corporate/government oligarchies, which is our fascist system. And this is all implemented by our lawyers, judges, bankers, and politicians who have sold the American people down the river. I mean, the DNC paid $12 million to former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele to gather information, usually second and third-party sources, which turned out to be Russian intelligence. And the FBI and CIA leaked information with John Brennan to get these FISA warrants to spy on the American people, including candidate Donald Trump, which continued through his presidency and his cabinet, along with the NSA. And Obama used fake information to get fake warrant to spy on Trump. It happens from the top down, people. The American people are being distracted, and we need to stand for principle. And I know I define that often, but I'm going to do it again. Principle has to be defined by the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody in American soil. It has to be based on truth, which means you have to have the guts to stand for principle, to be able to tell the truth and be willing to be hated for it, in lieu of wanting to be liked for blowing smoke up people's ass and telling certain people what they want to hear. And lastly, if someone does it because of what group they're in, race, gender, sex, sexual orientation, religion, ideology, doesn't matter, then you do it. And if you don't like it because you say two wrongs don't make a right, well, how many times have I talked on the air over the last 5-6 years about practice what you preach laws? Pardon my rant, Vince, but I'm done for the moment.
Well, I've got a comment about what you said, and I was thinking about AI as you were talking about that, and I've got, when we come back, I'll share my comment about software AI and the elite, and how the elite are going to want to exempt themselves from this AI. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben, offgridmontana.com. So I was thinking about this AI algorithm that Rich Scheben was talking about. For example, we're talking about an algorithm that will determine whether you can have surgery or not, whether you are suitable. Well, okay, so there's a simple change that a hacker could help the situation out with if there were such an algorithm that could be found, and if there were such a hacker. And I'm not advocating that anybody do this, but interesting mental exercise. So here we have an algorithm that has a statement that's like this. So if not equal to a, we'll call it specific name, then apply the AI algorithm. So if your name is not in there, then we apply this algorithm. So let's talk about, denying life-saving medical treatment. Okay. So if your name, you could use a person's name to make sure that they are exempt from AI. Okay. But if we put the word, if we took out the word not, we said if the name is equal to Senator so-and-so or Congress critter so-and-so or politician so-and-so or mayor so-and-so or CEO so-and-so, make them equal to us just by taking out the word not in this algorithm. Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't it be fun if hackers became really productive instead of stealing from us? They helped rewrite the rules. So now it's all equal. Everybody's equal. There are no special groups anymore because we pull out the word not. Or in other cases, we insert the word not. Wouldn't that be interesting, Rich Scheben?
Absolutely. And I think we have to give credit where credit is due, whether they're a white hat hacker. Now say that 3 times fast. That's a sobriety test for you. And, people like James O'Keefe from Project Veritas, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange from WikiLeaks. Maybe we should do some vacationing in Ecuador to thank them for housing him all these years. Nigel Farage, Tommy Robinson, Marine Le Pen, Wilder, those people are from Europe. Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh D'Souza's a hero. Look what he went through. Kevin Shipp, William Benny, ex-CIA. I mean, there's some really good people doing some good things, and too many people do things for things relating to money, fame, whether it be wanting to be famous or infamous, or having true insecurities and have a fear of not being liked, and they want to blow smoke up people's ass so they can tell certain people and groups what they want to hear, and not for the benefit of the long term or for the people. So, Vince, I'm all for white hat hackers, and it's amazing to me how many people get offended when they hear a certain word, but all the other things that are really important, they don't get offended. It's pretty obvious the mainstream media, especially when you look at how they glorified Kim Jong-un's sister at the Olympics, and they put down Pence, our vice president, and America, big time. It's pretty obvious that they're bought and paid for by the globalists, by the George Soroses, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and it's pretty obvious that our CIA, NSA, Department of Justice have all been bought and paid for. So
I'm trying to remember how many vice presidents of the United States went to Olympic Games. I'm really trying to remember. I don't remember reading about that. Do you?
With my memory, I wouldn't, use that as a great yardstick. I don't remember. You're right.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't stick out. Hey, when we come back, I've got a small description of just something that the government has done that's absolutely ridiculous. The government tells manufacturers that they will follow certain mandates. I'm going to tell you about a mandate that's absolutely ridiculous. So ridiculous it doesn't work. And it actually costs us more money. That's what happens when the government gets involved. We'll be right back with Rich Scheben, offgridmontana.com, right after the top of the hour news and commercial announcements. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Scheben's with us, and I got an email just now. I just checked during the top of the hour break. And Robert was amused when I used the term roommate to describe Michelle. And I just looked at her what would you call it? Application of paint on canvas. I guess it was supposed to be a likeness of her in some respect. And so I just measured the width of the tent she's sitting on. That, I guess, is her I don't know if it's a skirt or a dress or what this thing is. Looks like Omar made it. Used to be, maybe used to house camels or something. But boy, my mother would really not appreciate what I just said. Anyway, she said, don't be unkind. Well, it's hard not to be accurate in description, Mom. But anyway, so this tent that Michelle is sitting on is 5 times wider than Michelle herself. Takes up a lot of space. Now, would somebody really wear something like that? I mean, would you? It looks like it is longer than would be necessary to reach the floor if she were standing up. That's what it appears to be like. So, who would wear something like this? How could it? Literally, it looks like she would have a drop cloth, with a hole cut in it for her waist, and have some colors of some red and yellow and maybe kind of a rose and black and mostly white. It's like a drop cloth that's, 20 feet by 20 feet that she is got a hole through so she could, wear it to cover from her waist down. That's what this thing looks like. It's horrific. Absolutely horrific. I can't, even though I really don't like Michelle in any way, shape, form, I can't imagine her buying something like that to actually wear. I just can't imagine that. But anyway, we were talking about government and how governments exert threats to we the villagers and to corporations and make corporations do things that are impossible. Well, so in 2015, Rich Scheben, there was a Department of Energy. It mandated that dishwashers, I'm talking about electric dishwashers, use no more than 3.1 gallons of water per load. Now, that's not 3.1 gallons to wash. That's 3.1 gallons total. That's wash, rinse, and rinse. So it's like a gallon per cycle. Okay. And the problem with that is the manufacturers really couldn't make the dishes come clean with so little water. So what happens? Well, we get to wash our dishes twice in the dishwasher. Once for the initial washing, and then the second washing is to clean them so that we can eat from them. So now what we do is we use twice as much detergent, twice as much electricity, and more water than we would have in the first place. That's what government does. That's like saying to the automakers, you will create cars to get 100 miles per gallon. Okay, well, that's nice. I'd like that. We'd all like that. But the problem is physics gets in the way. We don't know how to do that yet, at least with petro fuels. Rich Scheben? I guess that was my comment about, wasting money and what the government makes corporations do. And then we pay for it.
Yeah, and a lot of it is funded by lobbying groups and special interests and PACs for the purpose of creating the monopolies and oligarchies and less competition in any particular field. But since we're back on our rants, I was wondering if I could pick up when I was talking about speaking of wasted taxpayer monies. So I'll keep it in that context, but how people get offended when Trump, for example, tweeted crap hole. And I'm saying crap because I know we're on AM and FM radio as well, or else I wouldn't be saying crap. So let's give me a couple minutes here, Vince, and let me just go over a few things that I want to ask the American people, are they offended? Are they offended when teachers in certain public schools, not all of them, are teaching 6-year-old kids how to give BJs and choose a gender and confusing the hell out of them at 6 years old? Are you offended when people are walking the streets with vagina hats? Are you offended when vaccines are maiming and killing people, but only when Trump or somebody says, crap hole? Are you offended about GMO foods? What happened to all you people out there who say, what happened when I can do with my body as I please? Or is it only dependent on what group you're in? So the powers that be can insult, degrade, and disrespect every group in order to make the population submissive and break their will under politically correct buzzwords like democracy, accountability, diversity, equality, and all these words that mean nothing. Are you offended when people who disrespect the flag, but not offended when the same people who are disrespecting our flag are taking our benefits without putting money into the kitty? Are you offended when men go into women's bathrooms? Are you offended with all the pedophilia running rampant around our country and the Western world and the rest of the world? Why don't they use the term adult mutual consensual sex in their laws? Are you offended when you have to pay back your student loans, but not offended by illegal aliens receiving free education, which you're paying for? Are you offended towards the ignorance and apathy, towards the better-than-your attitude, bought and paid for by the behaviors of Hollywood and their elite? Are you offended when illegal aliens get your tax money or corrupt politicians? Are you offended when racist groups like BLM, KKK, Antifa, and the Southern Poverty Law Center uses your taxpayer monies and gets bought by the elite through sedition, treason, and espionage? Are you offended when universities run by fascist socialism? Are you offended when Hillary Clinton, the FBI, the DOJ, the COA, Comey, Obama, the whole works, get away with lies, corruptions, and felonies? Are you offended when the Democrats, which I think everybody knows there's no Democrat Party left, they're the globalists, they're bought and paid for, when they treat inner-city people like crap and they're still asking for their vote over hundreds of years of gun-free zones and sanctuary cities, and they're getting treated like crap. And it was a great example of the State of the Union when President Obama brought those two brave couples where their daughters were killed by MS-13. You saw the reactions to the Democrats. It's because they're globalists. They're bought and paid for. Are you offended by leaders who don't practice what they preach? Do you know how many times over many different radio shows over the last 6 years I've talked about practice what you preach laws? Do you really think it's a left-right paradigm, folks? It's not. It's the aristocracy versus the serfs. If the economy is so great and all this BS, why, excuse me, why do we have the highest debt and largest credit collapse ever seen? Legal citizens are labeled racists and Nazis, but illegal aliens are called dreamers. Are you not offended when the liberal, again globalists, say if confiscating all guns saves just one life, it's worth it? Well then, if deporting all illegal aliens saves just one life, wouldn't that be worth it too? You can wave the flag of another country, but consider it a punishment to be sent back there. Aren't you offended when the left says the Constitution needs to be rewritten? No, folks, what they need to do is reread it. Aren't you offended when artificial intelligence will say who lives and dies regarding operations and procedures? People, we're being distracted, dumbed down, and divided. I give examples of this every time I'm on the air. I know people are waking up, but remember, silence equals consent. We all have to stand up. We have to ask for heroes. We have to ask for whistleblowers. Anybody who says that'll never change or says that'll never happen, they are poster boys for ignorance, apathy, and indifference. You need to leave them aside and move on. Changes are going to have to come from the bottom up. That's just the way it is. Vince, thank you for letting me rant, by the way.
Yeah, well, I was stuck on something you said previously, and something that I heard on the news. You know that Russian plane crash that happened a couple days ago? Whenever I hear of a plane crash, or at Scheben and class, whenever I hear of one, the first thing I think of was who was on board.
Yep.
Who needed to be killed.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Who needed to be killed. And isn't there a link between someone who was on board and the Clinton scandal? Isn't there some connection? Did you read about that? Yeah.
It's a couple of executives in that company who had something to do with the uranium. But think about this, folks. If AI can predict where you eat, what's your favorite restaurant, and they start delivering food to your house, you know how easy it would be to knock you out? I'm not trying to be morbid here. I'm just saying that.
Oh, okay. So
the people don't wake up.
So what we're saying is, so if you order pizza from Dominic's Pizza Joint, every Friday at 6:30 when you're home from work, wouldn't it be easy to have some guy show up at your door with a pizza who's really not from Dominic's? He's from some agency who decides that you need to be dealt with. So, class, I came up with a hypothetical story about Dominic's Pizza and how your regular pattern of movement can be tracked, and if you need to be dealt with, well, that'd be a great way to do it, right? Because they'd know your pattern. Well, think about what you do. You probably buy gasoline at the same pump on the same day at the same station, probably around the same time. Your habits are regular. You do things routinely. So what I try to do is, first of all, I don't travel with a cell phone, okay? And so I don't have a locator beacon with me. And I drive an old vehicle which doesn't have, satellite communications, so I can be found. So I drive an old vehicle, and I drive without a cell phone, and I don't take the same path all the time, okay? I go different ways. So I may go to the same place, but I go to the same place irregularly, and I go via different routes, okay? And I try to stop at different stores at different times. So keep that in mind if you don't want to be tracked. And there was a guy that I wanted to have on the radio, and it never really worked out, but I'd like to contact him again. He had a great idea. But unfortunately I don't think too many people would follow through with this. And he created a program that you could install on your computer. And what it did was it had a lexicon of words that you probably never use. And, like the kind of words that would get you thrown off an airplane. And I'm not talking about profanity. I'm just talking about words that someone might say that would cause the plane to be diverted, or you getting thrown off the plane, or something like that. Well, this guy put together that lexicon of those words that are being scanned for through all of our emails and discussions on the phone and so forth. And so he has this program that when you send an email to someone, it just adds some of those words. It picks them at random out of this lexicon of words. And if we all use that random selection of words in our emails, it would overwhelm the system. There aren't enough bureau rats to come and ask us about how come these words are in our emails. They just add them to the bottom. Well, what a great idea. Except I don't think too many people would follow through. And so, the 1,000 or so people who did follow through, they would all get visited. But if 100 million people used that program, then it would be a real problem for the other team. They'd have to find out another solution to the AI algorithm to want to come and visit us and ask us, how come we use these words? Interesting little concept that this guy had in his program. Rich, what's next?
Oh, boy. Do I have
okay, how about this?
hours?
How about this? How about this?
Okay.
We talked about plane crash. The official who okayed Barry Soetoro's birth certificate died in a plane crash. USA Today has published an article December 12th, 2013. And it says in this particular article, Hawaiian Health Director Loretta Fuddy was killed in a small plane crash off Hawaii. And the Hawaiian health official who verified, now I would put that in quotes, the authenticity of President Obama's birth certificate, died in a small plane crash. The plane carrying a pilot and 8 passengers went down in the water half-mile off the Hawaiian island of Molokai, the Maui Fire Department said. The lone fatality was Loretta Fuddy, who served as state health director since January of 2011. Yep, her death was confirmed. So there's a story about another plane crash. Who was on? So the question is, when you have a plane crash, who was on the plane? That's the first question. Now, you'll hear things like, there was a human error. Okay. There probably was a human error. And in the case of Loretta Fuddy, she made a human error. Made a couple of errors. One, she got on the plane. Two, she certified the authenticity of Barack Obama's birth certificate. There's 2 human errors there. So, yeah, when you hear human error was involved in a plane crash, you got to ask yourself, how are they twisting words? How are they wordsmithing words? Yeah. We'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us. Rich Sheben's with us, and joining us, Bob in Michigan. Welcome, Bob.
Hey, Vince. How you doing?
Very well, and you?
Yeah, good. From what you and your guests have been talking about, I wanted to let you know about something. George Norrie on his program last night, he had Ralph Nader on. And Ralph has some pretty interesting ideas as far as turning things around in the country here. So if you can somehow pull up that his interview on the program with George last night, I think you'd find it quite interesting. Or go to his website, I guess, Ralph's website. Because, he's quite a grassroots activist trying to turn things. He had some things to say that were, right in line with what, we're all trying to do to get this country back on the right track.
Okay, it looks like his website is called Nader, Nader.org. My mom met Ralph Nader many, many years ago, and she was really impressed with some of the things that he had to say. This was probably back in the 70s, in the 1970s, possibly in the 80s. Okay, his website is called Nader.org. Okay, there's a picture of him. He's the guy that took the Chevrolet Corvair off the market, and I think he wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's it. So.
Okay. And I just went to a website, speakergrills.com. That's you, right?
Foamspeakergrills.com, yeah.
Okay, foam speaker?
Foamspeakergrills.com.
Foam Speaker Grills with Grilles?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure I get there. Okay, yeah, I've got it. Foamspeakergrills.com. Custom polyacoustic foam grills, and you make them, for my favorite speaker, I see the checkerboard grill in foam for the JBL L100. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. Okay. And by the way, Bob in Michigan, do you paint them in the original colors? Like there was kind of a burnt orange, an electric blue. I don't even know how to describe this blue, and then there was a brown.
Yeah, I do all those, and I can even do some custom shade colors too if they want them. I need help.
I remember when I
need help here, though. I got other products that keep me busy.
All right, so Bob, if anyone wants to join your organization, you want them to contact you through the website, foamspeakergrills.com in Michigan?
I need some marketing help and some computer help, too, as well as production, because I can expand this business and out to probably where I can hire a whole bunch of people.
Okay. Class, here's the website, foam, F-O-A-M, speaker, S-P-E-A-K-E-R, Grilles.com. And Bob makes the speaker grills for those of us who have speakers who the grills have just decayed over the years. Now, my JBL L100s, I've got the, I guess it's called the chocolate brown. I originally had the burnt orange. I exchanged those for the chocolate brown, and if you touch them, they just disintegrate. Literally, just a touch of your finger, and they crumble. The original ones. So you make replacements. Can you share with us about what a set of grills would cost if you have the The walnut frame, the original walnut frames?
Well, the Quadrex, the original, is I get 150 a pair for those, but a simpler design, just without the pattern, is like maybe $100 a pair.
Okay. I don't know what a pair. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, those speakers, what they're restored, they're getting as much as $1,000 for a pair that's fully restored.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was looking up. Yeah, I see a pair of JBL L100s restored, $900 plus $200 shipping. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
See, now I'd like to reinvent that particular model with some upgraded, drivers and parts, and another foam grill, and reintroduce it to the market. That could be a big market seller too. So,
in my opinion, we have in our home old speakers. Everything we have is old, but I bought a pair of JBL L100s. I worked for an audio dealer back then, and I got them at cost. So they were probably $300 when I bought them, and I consider them probably, I know without a doubt, the finest sounding bookshelf speaker ever made, the L100s. I really believe that. Now, along with that is the studio monitor and the control monitors, also made by JBL, which are fine, very, very fine. But I think the best bang for the buck was the L100. We also have Dynaco A25s here that I purchased at flea markets and things like that for $25 a piece. And we have some acoustic research speakers here, which we purchased for, $20 a piece. So those were the days of really good quality wood cabinet speakers. We're talking the 70s and the 60s, right?
Yeah. Those are all collectible models. A lot of those. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that are involved with restoring, restoring, or upgrading the older models like that. So.
Yep. Well, very good. Bob, anything else you want to share with us?
No, I guess not right now. So.
Hey, thanks for calling.
Okay.
There goes Bob in Michigan. And that's great that he's doing that. And so I've got Ralph Nader's website. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can, let me click on contact. I wonder if I can call Ralph Nader and see if we can get him on the air. The only thing I can do is send him an email. Okay, but I'll do that anyway. But while I was listening to the commercial announcements during the previous break, I called the CEO of Miles Franklin, gold and silver dealer, who advertises on USA Prepares. And, I learned about him when his advertisements first aired. So I called him up a couple of days ago, and his name is Andy Scheckman. I invited him to be on the air with us and tell us about his thoughts, gold, silver, the long run, and I explained to him my thoughts on why you need to hold it. Max's law. Buy the best, pay cash, take delivery. And he absolutely agrees. Then I asked him about cryptos and what his thoughts were concerning cryptos and physical assets. And so we're going to have him on, and I'm looking forward to that. So that's coming up, probably in several weeks. Rich Scheben, back to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, Vince, I did, regarding what the caller said, and, Ralph Nader, there's a lot of great people out there with a lot of great ideas and solutions. And as you know, on this show, we talk about QE for the little people. I've given a whole rendition of ideas and solutions on that, along with Practice What You Preach laws and many other things. And we have to realize that regarding the left-right paradigm, a lot of these people on the left and right, they may look like enemies on the floor on television, but a lot of these people vacation together too. Now, I want to believe that Trump is not part of the club because of the fact that he's not politically correct in a lot of cases. And that usually equates to telling the truth, which truth is the number one antonym for political correctness, in my opinion. And he's got guts. So what we need to do, people, is to make people aware of the fact that controlling one's destiny for the bottom 93% is getting more and more difficult because hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications have been replaced by corruption, manipulation, deception, and nepotism in too many cases. So this is one of the reasons why we need to speak up, because there's not a lot of voices, there's not a lot of microphones for the little people, because the powers that be are doing everything to manufacture perception, pity, guilt, and ideology, and take control of the narrative, the memes, themes, talking points, and the microphones by only 5 companies out there. In other words, maybe 100 executives are controlling everything with media propaganda, subliminal messaging, Hegelian dialectic, and professional wordsmithing. And they're using group identity politics as one of their home run pitches. And we're at the point that the powers that be have lowered the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job so low that we've destroyed America from within. And when you reward mediocrity for decade after decade after decade, ingenuity, productivity, knowledge, innovation, opportunity is all gone in a country that's turned into an America of diminishing returns. So this is why ideas and solutions, Vince, has to be coming from the bottom up. We have to draw a line in the sand, have zero tolerance for political correctness, and not believe all these narratives. I mean, do you really believe, people, that it's all the white people's fault? Now think about this. Is it the white people or the poor/middle class, white male heterosexual with a Christian name that needs to be corralled? Because think about Zuckerberg, okay? Facebook. I call that the self-incrimination station. And most social media is. Twitter is the same way. Are they, whoever they is, are you going to confiscate their wealth of the white people? Like Zuckerberg, who calls the American people stupid, or Zucker of CNN, or Rothschild, Rockefeller, Gates, Jonathan Gruber, who also says the American people are stupid, or Jeff Bezos, Soros, Murdoch, the Clintons. Are their wealth, is their wealth going to be confiscated? I think not.
Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. George in New Hampshire is joining us. Welcome, George.
Hi, Vincent. Hello, Rich.
Hey.
I have a question for both of you. Hi, Rich. I have a question for both of you. Now, we're at an age, I can't speak for you, Rich. I'm not sure how old you are, but I can kind of tell by the way you put together and stuff. I think you represent an older, bygone America when let's just say we were educated not out of our common sense, but we were built up for a purpose, and we weren't, dumbed down, so to speak. And I'll just ask you this question. Now, I'm sure we've all held a lot of jobs in our lives over the years. Now, have you ever been approached when you were on a job by somebody who more or less was representing a certain element within the company and basically told, in so many words, like, what are you trying to do? Make us look bad because you were conscientiously trying to do the assignment that you were done and you just weren't goofing off?
Rich, you want to go first?
Well, I remember, and this, I'm going to have to paraphrase it, but in the book I talk about when I was working for GlaxoSmithKline, I actually asked to create a healthcare, a nutritional care program for the people, and I was looked at like I was an alien from outer space. And, anything to do with political correctness, when I was diagnosed with spinal stenosis and nerve damage, and I asked for a part-time job share with many a letter from neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons, and Glaxo said part-time job shares were for women only. It was pretty obvious that political correctness has totally dominated American culture, and it's basically a blunt, intentional indoctrination into a social agenda to keep the super rich wealthy and everybody else in the getting by category. It's basically a transfer of wealth from the middle class to the wealthy. And I realized that hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications do not equate to opportunity and success, especially with intelligence. And you mentioned dumbing down, George. And by the way, I'm going to be 58 in June, so I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know if I'd equate all baby boomers with common sense and logic. Definitely, probably more because of life experience. However, it's amazing when people in corporate America and the big corporate oligarchies and big government expect you to do very little. In other words, the standards and expectations has been lowered dramatically to reward mediocrity, as I was mentioning earlier. And this is why America has been destroyed. And we're a country of diminishing returns. And that makes it almost impossible for the little guy to control their own destiny. That's one of the reasons I talked about all this stuff. I don't know if I answered your question with specificity and detail. I think I ranted a little bit, George, but that's my answer.
I've got some specifics. I used to have a boss when I worked at a large organization, and sometimes he would have to be out of town and go to meetings that were not in our building, and he'd have to leave for the day. And sometimes he would put me in charge, and he'd say, Vinny, you've got the con. Vinny, you are in charge, meaning I've got the controls. I'm at the helm. And so I would say, yeah, okay. So I can do whatever I think is right and whatever I think needs to be done, right? He'd say, yeah, absolutely. Just don't fire Joe. and the reason, and Joe's not his real name, but the reason he said that is because he knew I would fire Joe, because I didn't think Joe was doing enough. I didn't think Joe was pulling his weight. So, George, in New Hampshire, to answer your question, I've never had someone tell me, slow down. However, I have been told, don't fire a guy who is slow and who's dragging us down. And so that guy was protected.
Well, like I said, I called late in the game, but I didn't want to interrupt Rich or yourself. And Rich, it wasn't an indictment of you. When I asked how old you were, I just didn't know, but I assumed that you were born in that kind of golden time, what I'd say, in the 50s and in maybe the very early 60s, when, in other words, there were enough people around who were level-headed, hard-working, reasonable, decent folk who basically just instilled in us a certain work ethic and a value system. That's all.
Gentlemen, we are out of time. We're out of time. Thanks so much for calling.